This is Diane from Diane's Corner, and I just wanted to do a little fill-in on the history of the Kessel House from part 1. So this can be called part 2, which is some of the research I did in trying to see if we could get the house to become part of the State Historical Society and get registered, which we were denied, and also some research to do a non-profit as like a cultural history center or the special event center. So here's what I came up with as far as some of the background and research of the house. And the first one I'd share is written by B. Peterson for the Belfield News, April 12, 1962. In 1910, bankers in Holland organized the Holland Land Company and invested about $1 million in farmlands, town lots, and a bank in the Belfield, Zenith, South Hart region. They hoped to send hundreds of Dutchmen to settle the 27 sections of land, but the venture did not pay off very well. Many of the Dutch settlers were inexperienced laborers with little knowledge of farm management. The huge Hollander house in Belfield and some other homes were sold after a few years of gradual losses. Of the large group which came to settle the area, many returned to Holland or found better prospects elsewhere. Only about 10 families remained and rented or bought farms of their own. So that's what B wrote for the bicentennial story. This was sent to me by one of the Dutch families, and it is a little bit of an expansion on the Holland Dakota Land Company. In 1909 and again in 1910, groups of Hollanders came to western Stark County. And the first group they had arrived from St. Paul had about 30 people in it. On July 1st, 1910, 44 Hollanders arrived. So, this group arrived in Stark County, and they belonged to the Dutch Reformed Church. And some of their names were Ed and William O'Connor of the Belfield Land and Investment Company. They sold over 12,000 acres of western Stark County land to a Dutch syndicate under the Baron of Holland and director from Amsterdam. The Badlands Times described it as over $1 million deal in dirt. The Times also claimed that the Dutch company was capitalized for over $47 million. It claimed that hundreds of sturdy Dutch were coming the next month. These hundreds never showed up. Just the two groups, 65 at South Hart in 1909, 44 at Belfield in 1910, and these Dutch owned land from Belfield to Dickinson along the Hart River. Now, William Gobius, who built the home that Tom Kessel has here, he was the manager of the Holland Dakota Land Company. And he, and some other research says that he was a chemist, and so he was the organizer of these efforts for the Dutch. So the first week the Dutch were here, they bought $70,000 worth of Belfield property and 5 large breaking rigs. Now, breaking rigs would have been to unearth the prairie for farming. and that was written in the Belfield Times, July 22nd, 1910. During the fall of 1910, a 100-acre experimental farm was started on the edge of Belfield. And that was kind of near where Ed Deletsky has his home right now. The office, a mansion by anyone's, now we're talking about the mansion on the hill here, is owned by, when this was written, owned by Phil Kessel. The experimental farm tried dairy farming and truck farming, and even tried caraway seed growing. And they built a modern cow stable on the farm. The Holland Dakota Land Company soon built a warehouse and barn at Zenith. The barn still stands and is owned by Ted Sanders at this time. The company's buildings rivaled Zenith as to which one would be bigger. The company's headquarters was the Pete Jensen Farm by Zenith. There was a Professor Shaw of the Northern Pacific Railroad that was given the use of 20 acres of the experimental farm in 1911, and it turned out to be a very dry year, and the company lost heavily, and things did not turn around. In fact, they got worse. 1911, there were locusts, and large profits were lost. So the company went broke, and the Dutch settlers left the area for the most part. As Pete Jensen put it, North Dakota was not another Holland. The company had farmed differently, it being the first to use large machinery on such a large scale in the area. They were kind of a little ahead of their time. William Appledorn, the company's blacksmith, settled at Zenith permanently. The Perdames family became a pillar of the South Hart community. Henry Van Hoof, coming from Holland in 1909, became another member of the South Hart community. However, most of the Dutch returned to Holland. While in the area, they attended local schools and influenced local happenings. Now here's something is kind of interesting. In the Belfield News Historical Edition of 1962, as one looks to the events of those days and the immigration of the Hollanders, one senses an air of mystery about the whole affair. What were the forces that brought about this remarkable transaction? What behind-the-scenes activity convinced these people that North Dakota would be the haven that they dreamed of? What were the thoughts of these people when they set foot on the Northern Pacific platform in Belfield? These and many other questions remain buried in the passage of time. Hopes ran high in those days. Certainly the O'Connor brothers had pulled off a remarkable feat. Something along the lines of an earlier dream of the Marquis de Morris in Medora. Undoubtedly, the O'Connors realized a lot of money in their land transactions. It is significant to note, however, that not many years later, the O'Connors left Belfield, terminated their business here, never to return. One can only guess and wonder at the factors involved here. Perhaps the real story will never be known. So that was part of the culture, part of the Hollanders coming to Belfield. And I thought another piece here that Richard Bolesky did, February 15th, 2018, explaining the Hollander House being envisioned for community use as a special events center. Kessel has since obtained a permit from the city of Belfield to allow the house's main floor to be used for special events such as club meetings, birthdays, reunions, and retreats. The permit allows occupancy of up to 40 people. And again, he goes into the history of how the house was built around 1910 by William Gobius, manager of the Holland Dakota Company. established in Amsterdam, and the company was a cooperative farm venture that owned the 27 sections of land, and that 1910, 44 people from Holland came. And all this can be found published at wikivisually.com. So they had high hopes for this community, but because of the poor, really the economy just dropped in this drought and locusts. 1911 was the World War I, and 1918 that flu came through, the Spanish flu came through and wiped out a lot of people, and the house became a hospital at the time. And also a little later on, Phil and Mildred Kessel bought the home and raised their 16 children there. So some of the descendants of the Hollanders continue to live in the area. Some of the surnames that Richard included here are from 1910, included the Perdameses, Clarys, and Corrins. And Kyans also are in South Hart. So that's the story from Diane's Corner tonight, and part 2 of the history of the mansion on the hill. Thanks for joining me. Bye now.